They say we came from the dirt. A minor species without the grand magic of the elves, the ancient strength of the dwarves, or the cunning of the goblins. We were born of mud and chaos, and we were expected to return to it. They called us the fleeting ones, the mortals, the simple people. They measured us by what we lacked: no wings, no scales, no innate connection to the world's deep-rooted power. But they never bothered to look for what we had. That's the thing about humanity. We don't have ancient power. We don't have a legacy that spans millennia. We have stubbornness. A defiance so deeply ingrained it's less a trait and more a law of physics. We trip and we fall, and a dozen times over, the universe tells us to stay down. And a dozen and one times, we get back up. We are the masters of the improvised, the artisans of the impossible, and the custodians of a simple, searing truth. No one deserves to be alone in the dark. I'm not a hero. My name is Kael. I'm a rogue, a scavenger, a bit of a thief. I navigate the forgotten corners of this kingdom, trading artifacts for coin, avoiding the notice of both the Fey courts and the high lords of men. I've seen things that would turn a man's hair white. But nothing prepared me for this. The chamber was old, cold, and smelled of rust and dried herbs. Flickering candlelight cast long, dancing shadows, making the very air feel thick with a kind of hushed malevolence. At the center, chained to a great iron pillar, was her. An elf. Her silver hair, the color of moonlight on snow, cascaded over her shoulders, but it was matted with dust. Her eyes, a shade of blue so deep it felt like looking into a winter sky, were wide with a quiet, terrified resignation. She wasn't an ordinary elf. You could tell by the cut of her leather and the delicate, intricate chains that bound her. This was a sacrifice. The hooded figures, robed in the black of a starless night, chanted in a language older than the mountains. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the feeling. It was a language of consumption, of taking, and they were taking everything from her. I was hidden in the rafters, my heart a hammer in my chest. This wasn't my fight. Not at all. The plan was simple. Slip in, find the ancient amulet said to be hidden in the cult's altar, slip out. Easy. Profitable. Survival. But then I saw her eyes. She wasn't screaming. She wasn't fighting. She was just accepting it. And that, for a human, is a kind of poison. We scream. We rage. We kick and claw and bite at the chains until our last breath. Seeing her so broken, so resigned, it felt wrong. It felt like a fundamental law of the universe was being violated. They see us as animals, but at least we're not monsters. The ritual continued. The main figure, taller than the others and cloaked in a robe of a finer weave, held a crystal that pulsed with a dark light. He was siphoning her life force, her magic. You could see it in the way the light from the candles dimmed, and how the air grew colder with every beat of that obsidian crystal. My mind raced. A direct attack was suicide. These were powerful mages, steeped in dark arts. I was just a man with a knife and a satchel of junk. But my satchel had a secret. A human secret. It was a collection of things that, to anyone else, were worthless. A handful of metal bearings from a forgotten cart. A shard of polished glass. A pouch of gunpowder I'd made myself. My plan began to form. It was reckless. It was stupid. It was human. I would create a distraction. A big, messy, chaotic distraction. First, the light. The cultists relied on the eerie glow of the candles for their ritual. The light was their focus, their power. I carefully pulled a small leather pouch from my bag. I'd filled it with fine, silken dust, the kind you get from grinding old tree bark. It was harmless, but when thrown into the air near a flame, it would make a beautiful, dazzling flash. I took a deep breath and chose my moment. As the lead cultist raised the obsidian crystal high, his voice rising in a crescendo, I dropped the pouch. It landed just behind him, bursting open. A cloud of fine dust erupted, catching the candlelight and igniting in a brilliant, harmless puff of light that lit the whole chamber in a blinding flash. The cultists were taken by surprise. They were trained to deal with swords and magic spells, not dust. Their chants broke. The obsidian crystal sputtered. Chaos is our native tongue. As the light faded, I moved. I didn't go for the cultists. I went for the candles. I used my knife to flick the hot wax onto the cold stone floor, then used the flat of the blade to extinguish the wicks. Flick. Extinguish. Flick. Extinguish. The chamber was plunging into near total darkness. The cultists cried out in alarm, their ritual completely broken. They couldn't see, but I could. My eyes, honed by a lifetime of navigating shadows, saw just enough to move. "What is this sorcery?" one of them yelled. I grinned to myself in the gloom. No sorcery. Just a human being a nuisance. I sprinted toward the pillar, keeping low, using the remaining candles as cover. The chains binding the elven woman were thick, meant to hold a beast, not a captive. But I wasn't going to break them. I was going to use them. I pulled out my last trick. A small, but well-greased block and tackle I'd pilfered from a dwarven mine. It was a simple machine, a testament to human ingenuity. With it, you could lift 1,000 pounds with the strength of one. I hooked the block onto a high point on the pillar, and the tackle onto her chain, right where it connected to her shackles. The cultists, now recovering from their initial shock, began to cast spells, throwing bolts of dark energy that crackled through the air, missing me by inches. Their arrogance was turning into fury. They were furious that a human was disrupting their sacred ceremony. I paid them no mind. I had a task. "Hold on," I whispered to the elf, my voice barely audible over the crackling spells. Her head snapped up. Her blue eyes, now shining in the low light, were full of a new emotion, confusion. She'd expected a beast to save her, or a god. Not a man in tattered clothes, smelling of cold and sweat. I pulled on the rope. The block and tackle whined, a sound of pure mechanical efficiency. The tension mounted. Creak. Groan. The chain strained. The cultists saw what I was doing now, and they redoubled their efforts, sending spells of pure force directly at me. "Stop him," the leader shrieked, his voice filled with a rage that shook the very foundations of the room. But it was too late. With a final, agonizing groan, the chain link snapped. The broken ends of the chains fell to the ground with a resounding clang, a sound that echoed like a defiant gong. She was free. I grabbed her hand. "Run," I yelled. "No." She was weak, her legs trembling from the long immobility. But the shock of freedom gave her a surge of adrenaline. We darted for the entrance, the cultists' screams of rage and frustration a symphony behind us. They were fast, but we knew the labyrinthine corridors of this forgotten place better than them. They knew the rituals, I knew the shadows. And in the shadows, humanity reigns supreme. We burst out into the night, the cold wind a sharp, welcome slap. I didn't stop until we were miles away, deep in a forgotten forest. Only then did I let her go. She collapsed, gasping for air, her body racked with tremors. I sat down next to her, my own lungs burning. After a long silence, she spoke. Her voice was thin, reedy, like a broken reed flute. "Why?" she whispered. I looked at her, at the raw terror still in her eyes, at the fresh bruises on her wrists. "Why what? Why did you risk your life for me? I don't know you. You are human." She said the last word as if it were a question, a plea for understanding. "Because that's what we do." I shrugged, a small, weary gesture. "I don't know. I saw you. And you were alone. And nobody should be alone in the dark." Her eyes filled with a new kind of light, not the cold fear from the chamber, but a warm, astonished awe. "We elves, we have a saying. The light of 1,000 stars cannot extinguish the smallest shadow. We believe our greatness is in our magic, in our ancient power." She paused, her gaze steady on me. "But you have no magic. You simply saw another being in pain and you acted. That is a power far greater than anything they were trying to steal from me. I didn't have a grand speech. I was just a man who didn't want to see a beautiful creature suffer." "I'm Lyra," she said, her voice stronger now. "Princess of the Silverwood." "I'm Kael," I replied. "Just Kael." She smiled, a fragile, exhausted thing, but a smile nonetheless. "Just Kael. The one who taught a princess what courage truly means. They say we're just mortals. We're just the fleeting ones. But they've got it all wrong. Our fleeting nature isn't a weakness, it's our greatest strength. Because we know every moment matters. We know every act of kindness echoes through eternity. We don't have time for grand, ancient rivalries or complex rituals. We just have time for what's right, for what's good, for what's human. And sometimes, that's all you need to save a soul.